Hello and welcome to the clinical orientation for Chicago State's Counseling Graduate Program. This orientation will take approximately an hour for you to complete. Today I'll be discussing the types of supervisors that you'll have during your practicum and internship. I'll provide an overview of the clinical handbook, what to do before you register for a site, how to register a new site. I'll explain your clinical hours, also your graduation requirements, and I'll explain professional organizations and the licensure process for the state of Illinois. Let's get started. We'll talk about your clinical handbook in this section. All the information that we discuss today will be found in your student clinical handbook. To the right of the screen, you'll see a list of forms that you'll be using throughout your practicum and internship experience. I've also provided a Word copy of these forms so that you can type directly on them. The forms with the asterisk I'll be talking a little bit more about. Most of the forms in here are self-explanatory. There are evaluation forms that you, the student, must fill out about your practicum and internship site and also your site supervisor. There are also forms that your university supervisor and your site supervisor will complete regarding you as well. Outside of the forms that's required, there's other documentation that is required for your portfolio. Please make sure to take a look at the portfolio checklist inside of your clinical handbook, and it will give you all the forms that is needed for your portfolio. You are responsible for following all guidelines in your student clinical handbook, so please make sure you take a look at it. Now we'll discuss things that you need to do before you apply for your site. You need to have your practicum site before you actually start practicum. And so now is a good time while you're in pre-practicum to start looking for those sites. However, before you start to look and contact sites, make sure you receive prior permission from Dr. Witherspoon if you're in clinical mental health, or Dr. Lynch if you're in school counseling. Also, you can only start to see clients once you are in practicum. You cannot commit to seeing clients while you're in pre-practicum. You need to also purchase malpractice insurance because you are at risk of a lawsuit while you're a student. Malpractice insurance will provide you with coverage. You can go to the website HPSO to find out all the coverage that your malpractice insurance will provide. Also, please note that malpractice insurance is only for a year, so you will have to repurchase during practicum and internship. We have developed professional relationships with these sites, and if it's a new site, we'd like to develop a professional relationship with them. But that starts with you. We expect you to remain professional at all times while you're working with this site. So you can start by having your resume reviewed by a faculty person to make sure it's really highlighting your counseling experience. Make sure you dress professional at all times, whether you're with colleagues, your site supervisor, and with clients. And of course, it's important to act in an ethical and professional manner at all times. Many of you will ask if you can use your place of employment for your practicum or internship experience. For school counselors, the answer is generally yes. You can use your place of employment if you work at an elementary or a high school. This is generally up to CPS. CPS will, and I'll talk a little bit more about this, they will determine what school that you will go to for your practicum and internship experience, and they determine what school is available. But if you are already at an elementary or high school, then generally, yes, you can. But you also want to confirm that with your instructor before you do. For those of you all in clinical mental health, the answer in general is no, with one exception. We usually will allow you to work at your place of employment if you work at a large facility, for example, something like Aunt Martha's, where you can work at a different in a different section, and your supervisor can be someone outside of your employer. The reason why we generally don't allow it is because we don't want your relationship with your supervisor, your employer, to spill over into your practicum and internship experience. We don't want them to evaluate you based on how you are as an employee. We really want their evaluation for you as a practicum or internship student. Also, we want you to get a wide variety of experiences, not just work with one population, but be a well-rounded counselor where you can work with different people in different populations. So before you actually commit to a site, make sure that you are clear about your dates of commitment. For example, if this is your last semester and you're going to graduate, usually your date of commencement is earlier than the date of than the end of the semester. So you want to make sure you are clear about your start date and your end date. And you also want to check with your CSU instructor to see how you will handle things like spring break, Christmas break, that usually happens during your practicum and internship experience. You must be supervised by your CSU supervisor and your site supervisor every week. And so if there's a time that we won't be in school, you need to talk to your CSU instructor about how you are going to continue care for your clients. And you also need to talk to your site supervisor if they intend on being out of the office for a week for vacation or some extended period of time. You need to talk to your CSU instructor about how to handle that at your site. If you committed with an agency and then you just change your mind and decide to work with another one, make sure you notify the first site as soon as possible and notify them in writing to let them know that you're no longer going to accept their site. Again, we want to make sure that we maintain positive relationships with all of our agencies. And also, don't confirm with your site until you receive approval from your CSU instructor. If the site is already on the pre-approved list, then you're okay. If it's not and you want to get it approved, again, you must confirm with your CSU instructor before you commit. For those of you all who are on the school counseling track, you must take and pass the Illinois School Counselor Content Area Test before you can begin your internship experience. You also must pass the TB and background check. Now, here's the tricky part. You want to give yourself enough time to complete it. Generally, background checks may take you up to 90 days, and so you want to give yourself time to complete that because they will not allow you to start before that is completed. However, you don't want to start too far in advance because they need the background and TB test done within a certain amount of time of you starting your internship site. So again, you don't want to do it too early and outdated, and you don't want to do it too late and have to wait time in order to start your site. To apply for your internship with Chicago Public Schools, you want to go ahead and click on the site that's provided. Make sure you realize that it's a case-sensitive website, so make sure you capitalize all the letters that are capitalized within the link that is shown on this page. This is for those of you all who are in clinical mental health who would like to work at a specific site that's not on our pre-approval list. So if there's a site that you'd like to work at and you'd like to get it approved, then make sure that you talk to your practicum and internship instructor first and receive their approval to proceed forward. Once you receive their approval, then you need to make sure that this site meets our minimal requirements, which are a licensed counselor with the LCPC, a licensed social worker with the LCSW, or a licensed psychologist. They must be licensed in the state of Illinois, and they must have held their license for at least 2 years. The person that is licensed must be the person that will supervise you on a weekly basis, and they must commit at least 1 hour per week. Some people will say, well, we have a licensed person, but we'll have an unlicensed person to supervise you, and then we'll have a licensed person to sign off. That is not acceptable. The person that holds the license must be the person that also supervises you every week for 1 hour. When looking for a site, make sure it's an agency that will allow you to tape at least 2 clients per semester. Once you get an agency that agrees with this, you also have to have a client that agrees with this by signing the client release form. If you're dealing with children that are under 18, then they must have a parent or guardian to sign the release form. We also have this release form translated in Spanish. You'll find all these forms in your clinical handbook. The agency must also be able to provide you with a group counseling experience, either as a facilitator or a co-facilitator. They also must be able to provide you with adequate direct and indirect hours. I'll talk about what the difference is between direct and indirect, but when you're doing your research, make sure this agency can provide this for you because both are very important to your grade. And lastly, also make sure that the agency is following the ACA Code of Ethics and Standards. You don't want to be at an agency that will make you liable in the future for behavior that is outside of your control. So make sure you do your research, ask lots of questions, and again, talk to your university site supervisor because they can help you with that as well. For those of you all who intend to work with elderly or children, a background check is mandatory. So that means for those of you all who intend to work in school counseling, you will have to get a background check. However, for those of you all in clinical mental health, there are some agencies that still require a background check. Now, this does not exclude people who have a legal history. What you'd have to do is check with the agency that you intend to work with and ask them about their background check policies. Just because you have a legal history does not necessarily exclude you from working at an agency. If you have any concerns, make sure you talk to your CSU instructor about your concerns. For those of you all who need to have a background check, your agency generally will have you to provide that. And so if you need a place to go to get your check done, you can go to the College of Education. They will provide you with one, again, for a cost. So now I'll break down what direct and indirect hours that you'll need for your practicum and internship experience. Many students wonder what's the difference between practicum and internship, and virtually there is no difference except for the number of hours that you're required to do per course. For practicum, you're required to do 100 hours, and of those, 40 direct, 60 indirect. For school counselors, you're required to do 600 hours. 300 hours are to be in an elementary school and 300 in a high school. Of those total hours, 240 are to be directly with students and 360 of indirect hours. For clinical mental health students, you're required to do 900 hours, and of those, 360 are direct and 540 are indirect. You're also required to come to class each week at Chicago State, and that includes triadic supervision, which means you will meet with your instructor and 2 other students to have triadic supervision in addition to your weekly class attendance. You're required to bring tapes to class each week. Even if they're not reviewed, you have to bring a tape. And for practicum, you need a minimum of 2 case reports, and for internship, you need a minimum of 3 per every 3 credit hours, which means total for the 900 credit hours, you need 9 case reports. Are you thinking, say what? I have to now take my tapes and not only will my teacher hear them, my classmates will hear them as well? Well, yes, but that's a good thing. This is the point in your career where you'll be supervised the most. So take full advantage of that. Make sure that you compliment yourself on the things that you do right, but also learn from the things that you need to improve. Ask questions. We don't expect perfection. We only expect growth. So by now, I'm sure you're wondering, what are direct and indirect hours? An easy way to remember it is direct is any time you are with a client face-to-face. Usually that includes when you're doing group, family, or individual work. Also when you're doing an in-person intake. However, anything done over the phone or online is considered indirect hours. Also, group counseling is just that, when you are group counseling as a facilitator or co-facilitator. However, if you're just presenting information, that is considered indirect hours as well. If you're unsure about the differences, then talk to your university supervisor and they will help you out. So anything that's not direct, of course, will be considered indirect. Indirect are divided into different types of categories. You have administrative, consultation, staffing, supervision, and training. And when you complete your weekly log, you'll see how you have to log each of these separately. Administrative is anything that's dealing with paperwork, filing, or preparing for any type of groups or workshops that you'll have to do. Consultation is when you meet with another professional outside of supervision and you're discussing a client, you're discussing different ways or techniques on how you can handle a client. But this is generally outside of supervision. For example, sometimes at your agency you'll have to meet with a psychologist. The psychologist may ask you questions about the client to see if their medication is working or how lucid the client is. Those are examples of consultation. Staffings are usually done at your agency on a weekly basis, and that's when the staff gets together and they. For those of you all who intend on graduating at the end of the semester, congratulations. We are so proud of you. Here are some graduation requirements to keep in mind as you go along your process. There are two parts that are necessary to take and pass for your graduation requirement. Part 1 is objective. It's a multiple choice test with 200 questions, and you can take it as early as your practicum class. You can use any type of NCE study materials to really go over and study for this exam, because the same areas that's covered in your Comps 1 exams are the same areas that will be covered in your NCE exam as well. The list of areas that will be covered are listed on this slide. Part 2 of your exam is an essay exam, and you will be given a case. For those of you all who are in school counseling, you are usually given a case about a child. And clinical mental health, you can be given a case about either a child or an adult. So be prepared for both. A good study material to use for your Comps Part 2 is the NCMHCE study materials. Those are the same study materials that you'll use when taking your licensure exam for your LCPC. This is usually taken during your internship experience. And the reason why I don't have areas that it'll cover is because it covers everything that you study during your program. You will include all the information that you've learned inside of your case conceptualization. If you're concerned about your writing, then make sure you take the case conceptualization and treatment planning class. Also, they do case conceptualization in your advanced psychopathology class. And in most of your internships, you will also have to do some type of case conceptualization. So you should have plenty of practice before you go into your exam. Study materials for either exam can be found on the nbcc.org website. If you follow the red button, it will lead you directly to the study guide. One of the more reasonable study guides for Comps Part 1 is the Encyclopedia of Counseling. You can find this on any type of website that sells books. Some of the more used websites are Borders, Amazon, and Barnes & Noble. Additional information about the NCE or the NCMHCE can be found on the Association for the Advanced Training of Behavioral Sciences. Go to aatbs.com for more information. So here's a graduation application process in a nutshell. You'll complete a submitted graduation application a few weeks after the semester begins of the semester that you intend to graduate. Early applications will not be processed. Once you have submitted that, I will then check to make sure that you have all your requirements for your program. Then I'll tell you that you need to come back and pick up your graduation application. You take that graduation application to the cashier's office and you pay your graduation application fee, and then take it to the graduate school so that they can process it. They will then check to make sure you have all your university requirements, any transcripts, any outdated library fees, all that. They will check for that. If you intend on participating in commencement, then you will also have to pay a separate and additional commencement fee. Once you've done that, look out for any advertisements for commencement countdown, and that'll let you know when you can come and pick up your cap and gown, how you can buy announcements, class rings, etc. You are not officially graduated until your degree is conferred. That is when you are officially a graduate of Chicago State. If you do not graduate during the semester you applied, then you must reapply the following semester. You do not have to submit another graduation application fee, but you must submit another completed application. Right now you're inundated with a lot of information as a student. However, once you enter the professional world, you won't have that constant feed of information. And so it's important to join professional organizations. There are many benefits to joining a professional organization. I listed a few on this site. But one of the main things is to make sure that you stay current with all the research and information that's available pertaining your profession and your clients. So make sure you stay in touch and stay knowledgeable through your local professional organization. We have national organizations, which include American Counseling Association and American School Counseling Association. These organizations have conferences once a year, and they're usually in different locations all across the United States. However, if you can't afford to go to any of those national conferences, then you can participate in some of our regional conferences. The first through Chi Sigma Iota, also Illinois Counseling Association and Illinois School Counseling Association. They have some, again, that are locally, and they also have it by region, southern, northern, western Illinois. And so there are plenty of opportunities to get in there and get involved. It could be at the most basic level as a member or a committee member, even as chair. And you don't even have to be a professional to do this. You can join even as a student because they love fresh new energy. Now, I put accreditation here not because this is an organization that you can necessarily join. However, this is who accreditates our counseling program. We know it as CACREP. The official name of it is the Council for Accreditation for Counseling and Related Educational Programs. It's just a good name for you to know that's out there. And also, if you check their website from time to time, they have scholarship opportunities that are available for students. So look at their website on ndcc.org. A lot of people hear the term certification and licensure, but sometimes they don't know what's the difference between the two. And that's because both of them are very similar to each other. They both are obtainable, and they're also both voluntary, so you don't have to get them in order to graduate, and you don't even have to get them while you're in the field. However, they do open doors for you, but they open different doors. And so what I mean by that is certification means that you are certified in a specific area. For example, a marriage and family therapist or a clinical mental health specialist. You are specialized in that certain area, telling your clients and other peers that you're specialized in this area. Also, certification is voluntary. The same with becoming a national certified counselor. That is a voluntary experience, and it's something that you do not have to do in order to graduate. However, it is helpful for people to know that you specialize in these areas, and it may even be a resume booster for you as well. Here are examples of some voluntary certifications that you can obtain after you graduate. This is by no means an extensive list. However, you can Google to see if there are other things that your areas of specialty that you're interested in. But this is a good way to make sure that you are certified to work with certain populations. As we continue to examine certification versus licensure, the difference between a license means that you are able to use a protected term. Becoming a LPC, a licensed professional counselor, or LCPC, licensed clinical professional counselor, those are legally protected names, and you must obtain the license before you can call yourself that. You also need the LCPC in order to practice independently or own a private practice. Licensure also requires a period of supervision, which right now the state of Illinois does not require a log, but you do have to be supervised by a licensed professional. Also, there is no portability, which means every state has different licensure laws. And so if you intend to move to another state, make sure that you know the licensure laws for that state, and try to complete those before you graduate. Some laws may be more lenient, and some states may be more lenient, and some states may be more strict than Illinois. So make sure you check out the state that you intend to move in and know what their laws are regarding licensure. There are certain pages from your clinical portfolio that are important to save, just in case in the future you intend on moving to another state, or that state requires a teacher's signature and you may not be able to get in contact with that teacher anymore. You will have the teacher's signature on these pages, so make sure these pages stay a part of your permanent record. And they are your site registration form, your summary log sheet, your field supervision information, and your practicum and internship site information. We are only required by law to keep these records for a certain amount of years. After that, it's all up to you to have records of these. It also eases the process along if you do want to apply for a license a few years out and someone else, you may have other instructors or people who don't know you, but you will have that documentation that you can show them. Illinois has a two-tier licensure system, and this is provided by the Illinois Department of Finance and Professional Regulations. The first tier is the Licensed Professional Counselor, which is the LPC. Because you attend the K-CREP University, there are parts on the application that you will be able to skip. And you qualify for this license right after you pass the NCE and you graduate. Now, if you attended a non-K-CREP university, you'd have to wait a year post-master's. You'd have to pass the NCE, which is the National Certified Counselor Exam. The National Counselor's Exam. Now, in order to become the LCPC, which is the second tier, a Licensed Clinical Professional Counselor, you have to take and pass the NCMHCE, which is the National Clinical Mental Health Counselor Exam. You are required to wait until you receive your master's degree, and not only that, you have to wait an additional 2 years of what's equivalent to full-time employment. You also have to be licensed by a licensed clinical professional for those 2 years. Now, after you receive your LCPC, you can work independently, you can own the private practice, and you can also bill third-party insurances. You will also be allowed to supervise other non-LCPCs as well. Having a legal history does not automatically eliminate your chances of being licensed. If you'd like to know if you're eligible for licensing, you can fill out the healthcare workers charged with convicted or of criminal act form. Now, they have a list of what they consider forcible felonies on the IDFPR website. And I'm sorry, it's included with the application. And they review this on a case-by-case basis. Now, having this review may take an additional fee, and again, it's something that they will review. Now, there are certain crimes that will automatically deny you licensure, and those are listed below. They're usually any type of sexual offense against a minor, and any type of offense against the elderly, and criminal battery against a patient. For those of you all who are in school counseling, you do not currently meet the requirements in order to become a LPC or a LCPC. In order to meet those requirements, you will need to take 2 additional classes, one in substance abuse and one in family systems. However, you do meet the requirements to become a professional education for the professional educator's license for school counseling. Now, for more information about this license, you will need to contact the Office of Teacher Certification. In general, once you apply for graduation, they will contact you a couple of weeks later. They usually contact you regarding a mandatory meeting that outlines all the steps that you need to take and all the documentation that you need in order to get this license. However, if you need additional information, just feel free to contact the Office of Teacher Certification in the Education Building. For those of you all who are in clinical mental health and may be interested in becoming a school counselor, you have almost met most of the requirements. Here are the additional things that you will need in order to enter that certification program. You need to take and pass the TAP test, the test of academic proficiency, before you apply. Then you need to apply to the program. You also have to take a couple of additional courses. The first one is an ED course, Ed 5820, and that's only for those of you all who do not have a current teacher certification. You also have to take the Intro to School prerequisite, and by the time before you enter internship, you will also have to take and pass the Illinois Content Area Exam for school counselors. There's only a 15 credit hour requirement for the core courses. Of that, you have already taken 2, the first 2, which is treatment interventions and research. You would only need to take advanced school counseling applications, which is Counseling 5780, and then do a 600-hour internship, 300 in the elementary school and 300 in a high school. You also will have to work in practicum, in your clinical mental health practicum. You'll have to work with children. If you don't work with children, then you will also have to retake your practicum class.